We are live. This is the market update. I am your host, Bill Noble. Do you ever get that feeling that you put a trade on, and then as soon as you put the trade on, you were like, oh my God. I think I just had one of those moments. So at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm working on the crypto blow off top research. And then I take a nap accidentally, fall asleep, and I wake up to the possibility of a geopolitical event that I guess was theoretically on the table, but now actually is on the table. And at a moment where the world's debt problems pointed to Bitcoin, and still do, now we're in this weird space where it's like all-time high, blow off top, but oh my God, what about this? So we're going to unpack all that and get everyone sorted out right now. Okay, we have Alexandra joining us from Europe. Welcome. We have Carmenko, DH, Zepetis, and Ben. Welcome. Job, Blown Ideas. Hello. Yao Lopez from Portugal. Warmon and Tyler Hall. Gentlemen, welcome. Tim, Old Smoky. Arendon, Thomas. Find Out Now 7. Welcome. Along with Jelster. Okay, let's tear into some robust news. And some really funny news on top of that. Okay, Watcher Guru. Normally this source of like infinite news. Like, I mean, it's like 6 tweets an hour. They posted 108K Bitcoin and then nothing. Like at 2 o'clock in the morning, they were like, is the timestamp on this was 2:07 a.m. Like I fell asleep. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to wake up. Bitcoin's going to be at 120. Wait a minute. They stopped posting. Okay. So again, the good news was Senate unexpectedly passes no tax on tips. Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana game after Senate passes stablecoin bill. 2 billion Tether just minted. Here they come. Bitcoin breaks record, highest daily close. Oil market climbs as Israel is preparing to hit the Iranians. And I'm like, okay, so let's talk about this. So in order for Israel, like it is a long way from Israel to Iran. And there's no way that Israel can pull something like that off at scale without us, without massive support from us as in the United States. So on one hand, the Orange Man has publicly distanced himself from the leader of Israel and said all kinds of harsh things about him. But meanwhile, we must be supporting this because there's no way this could ever happen unless we're helping them. And this actually hit the market. Like the market actually believed this. And I think you have to believe it, right? I mean, dollar lower, oil higher on reports that Israel is going to hit the Iranians. Now, normally you don't take these geopolitical things seriously. I mean, I don't know how many times in the last year and a half we have heard, the great next war is here. That said, the market took this seriously because I fell asleep. And like I said, I was like, oh my God, it's going to 120. And then boom, it just stopped. Because, I mean, this could send all capital markets reeling. We'll go over the chart of stonks to check out just how exactly vulnerable it is. Okay, now you might be asking yourself, Bill, you just said that, we've had global conflict multiple times and it's true that turned out to be wrong. And then this happens. So these are, Alex Jones is the right. This kid Fuentes is very far right. And somebody texted him last night or super chatted on his show about this guy, James Comey. Now, he's a former director of the FBI. And he posted this really weird thing on his Instagram where it said 8647, which is interpreted as 86 means remove, as he said, remove from the menu. And 47, he's the 47th president of the United States. So he wrote it in the sand. So 8647, he writes in the sand. And then this guy, James Comey, because of this is like huge public message, actually gets picked up by the U.S. Secret Service that protects the president and takes every single threat seriously. It is completely illegal and has been for a very long time to make that kind of threat about the president. So you're like, why would some former FBI director? I mean, he was far from pro-Trump, right? Kind of like Trump's opposite party. But why in God's name would he do something like that? Okay. And then you find out that the day he posted it, okay, was the 8,647th day since 9/11, which is just very spooky coincidence, given that there's like a geopolitical event hanging in the balance, right? And the conclusion from this, from the show, is there going to be another what they call false flag, or is there going to be an event that's going to on our soil that's going to pull us into that other conflict? And this kid looks at this and is normally like, oh my God, no way. Like, this is not really happening. So the market is taking this seriously for a day because there's a lot of weird stuff that all of a sudden started happening. And this is even weirder. I mean, it is Weird Wednesday. Well, let me read this exactly. The European Central Bank is warning that gold markets could pose a threat to the Eurozone's financial stability in the event of geopolitical stress due to demand for physical settlement of gold. And I'm like, okay, let me get this straight. So there could be a geopolitical event that causes demand for gold. That's not new. But what is new is that the European Central Bank, the central bank, is saying the quiet part out loud. That, people have IOUs or pieces of paper or futures contracts that says that they own gold. And if everybody went to take delivery of their gold at the same time, you would have a bank failure. You would have multiple, because the banks, like there's the exchanges and people who have the paper gold, right? So who's in the middle? Who would lose if this group, right, couldn't deliver to this group? The banks, the big ones. So the European Central Bank is saying something that could be drawing attention to something that could blow up the system. I'm like, what, are you kidding? Like, again, this is a known issue. It's not discussed, but it's a known issue. But why would the European Central Bank all of a sudden draw attention to this? And I hate to tell you this, but the only answer that I could come up with is that either they are doing a geopolitical event this time, or they want to create a crisis to sort of hurt the current U.S. administration, push back against the Orange Man type thing. Now, again, that could wind up just being a coincidence. But I'm telling you, the market took this seriously. And ironically, this tweet is more of a problem than the geopolitical issue, which is why everything just stopped on the way up to 120. I mean, it was going to moon massively, right? And here's why. So Congress, I mean, they're really going to pass. I had no idea how big this bill was, right? So Congress, of course, tax cuts. We'll cut taxes as long as I get my sugar, right? And of course, the reason they're cutting taxes is because the U.S. consumer is imploding. right? So think about this. Wait a minute. So in a way, there are things here that were perfect for Bitcoin. They have the stablecoin bill. They have, consumer rolling over, which has got to bring the Fed in with lower rates. Everything was absolutely perfect. And then this other stuff hits, right? Because, like I said, student loan delinquencies, like there was something that the last administration passed that kids didn't have to pay. Kids are not paying, right? It's expired. And if they don't get tax relief, right, they're going to have massive defaults on student loans. But this all kicked in. And in my mind, this was all super constructive for Bitcoin. But again, that weird geopolitical event thing happened. Plus, like I said, this type of news can be negative for bonds. Can be, obviously, because no one's paying their student loans and we're going to do this big tax cut. So they just keep handing out the money. And this was great for Bitcoin, right? This is why we crypto, right? Consumer implodes, Congress printing money. But it stopped or paused because what the ECB said and because the market, for whatever reason, took this strike on Iran seriously for a day. And it kind of scared me, because when I woke up and everything was kind of like flat to down, especially after all this news about stable coins, it's like the greatest thing for crypto ever. Like, here comes stable coins, 2 billion's minted. Okay, great. And then boom. So we'll look at some charts and we'll talk about it in a minute. But Trump import tax, in other words, tariffs, counters the tax relief. So, somebody does pay. Somebody does pay, right? The big, beautiful bill will massively increase near-term deficits and add $5 trillion to the debt, right off the bat. Now, like I said, this is unbelievably bullish Bitcoin. That said, if you put a debt problem together with a geopolitical problem to putting together a gold market problem, that's why the market just stopped. That's why it stopped. Now, what's going to happen now, that I don't know. But I want you to be aware of it. Okay. Meanwhile, back at the Legacy Ranch, you have Ray Dalio is back, right? Waiting, trying to call the crisis again. It's almost like this guy has become, in my mind, the new Kramer. Every time this guy comes out and says it's the end of the world, Bitcoin goes up 10%. Seriously. Every time he was telling everybody that it was the end of the world, literally at the lows. So, again, there are people who seem to want a crisis to happen, and I don't know why. And at the end of the day, because you're probably wondering what the message here is. The message is still, this is why we crypto. And I don't understand how you could have Bitcoin falling and Web3 falling, temporarily, or unless something totally stupid happens. I don't think they can suppress it anymore. Because again, there is a major problem here. But the only solution to that is not to implode the market or the stock market, it's to moon Bitcoin. We'll see. Now, in more evidence that something is really wrong with the world, right? So Elon says Tesla is seeing a major rebound. Do you remember Elon, in cabinet meetings with his MAGA hat on, screaming at certain cabinet officials that they weren't doing enough cuts, and the Doge team was going to cut $1 trillion and all of that? Yeah, not anymore. Elon Musk made it pretty clear he won't be opening his wallet for the Republicans in the midterm election. So that means any hope of cost cutting is completely over. Not only are they not doing the cost cutting, but Elon is out. Now, if you're in another country and you don't understand this, here's what happened. Here's why there will be no cost cutting in the United States. So, Elon is just riding high. He's on the Trump train. He's just having a great time. He's saving America. He's cutting costs. What he was really doing was trying to save the mission to Mars, because that's a multi-trillion-dollar business or enterprise. And then they were handing out money for protesters. So they were giving, as in, I don't know, the 8647 weird, scary people, the gold default crowd. All right. They were handing out money for people to protest. Then they were handing out money, I think, to vandalize Tesla cars. And the next thing you know, I looked at this and I was like, wait a minute. If you buy a Tesla and this is going on, car insurance companies are going to be like, yeah, you're going to pay triple. And the next thing you know, Elon gets a phone call from the Tesla board of directors, which undoubtedly includes BlackRock, Vanguard, all these big mutual fund companies that they own the entire S&P and probably own huge chunks of Tesla. They're like, yeah, Elon, do you remember Steve Jobs from Apple? Yeah, in the 80s, he got fired from his own company. And that can happen. That can happen. So Elon had to stop. And you notice he's completely disappeared from the public eye. I mean, the last thing I saw of Elon was he was on stage with the president of Argentina with the giant chainsaw, and then he's gone. And now he says he's really gone. He's permanently out. They may come out and deny this later, but okay. So you're like, all right, Bill, that's nice. Tell me something good. Now, this guy, I used to work with him. His name is Jordi Visser. He's become essentially the key thought leader because he's put AI and Bitcoin together as the key to the prosperity trade, which I absolutely love. In other words, everyone's talking about a problem, and there is a problem here, and that's why crypto stopped, because there are multiple things happening at the same time. That said, he's saying the AI and Bitcoin trade is about prosperity. So here's him on AI. We've moved beyond training large models to deploying them in real time. This transition is driving a surge in capital expenditure. So businesses like, big tech companies are spending money on data centers, et cetera. This transition is driving a surge in capital expenditure, supporting margins across big public companies, and is a structural force that we don't understand yet. So there's all these guys like Ray Dalio, and, assuming there is no geopolitical event, everybody's talking about all this negative stuff. Meanwhile, AI is actually creating prosperity. It is. Now, it's also disrupting the labor market, right? Productivity is way up, but there's a problem in the labor market, which I argue should bring in the Fed. So if there's a problem with Target, there's a problem with student loans, and if there's a problem with the labor market, even though this is prosperous for the overall economy, the Fed's got to come in. They have to come in and cut rates. Like, they absolutely have to. Or they have to get massive tax relief in people's hands, like actual checks maybe, sending them money. Okay? So on one hand, AI is super prosperous. On the other hand, on the same hand, Bitcoin is going up massively. On the other hand, it's almost like they tried to stop it. It's really weird. Really weird. Okay, so the stock market reaction to this mixed bag of news was to stop at resistance. And I have to admit that I was wondering whether or not Bitcoin was going to be the first asset that I looked at since I started using Lux Algo to actually go through its premium zone. And then this market, like I said, it just stopped because everyone was like, oh my God, 108. It was, how could it not go up? How could it not blow through 110? And then the next thing you know, weird news meets technical resistance, and it stops. It stops. Okay. Now, the good news is, like Solana and Ethereum and just about everything else, is sitting on top of its 200-day moving average. And, there's like 70% to go until it gets to resistance. So if there is no geopolitical event, I just can't believe altcoins aren't going to just go up, right? In other words, I just read you this whole litany. Geopolitical event, Ray Dalio's about debt, some kind of problem in the gold market it's just being announced or promoted in a way that's bizarre. Yet the good news is altcoins are not down. Altcoins are not down. Bitcoin stopped, but Solana's up, like even with the bad news. So if the bad news isn't bad, what's going to happen? You follow what I'm saying? Okay. So naturally, the crypto media, these are the same guys that were talking about crypto winter. Remember that? It's kind of funny. Like 5 weeks, it was crypto winter. I don't even know if it was 5 weeks, 4 weeks, maybe. Bitcoin blow off top. This is when, oh my God. I was like, no, don't do it. Don't say it. They're saying it. I love this, that NFTs are not securities. I can't believe, I understand that, if you issue something and there's an expectation that you and the person that buy it could profit. But I'm so glad the government continues to roll back all this Gensler anti-crypto stuff. They're literally closing down crypto enforcement. Now, I don't know if they're adding anything new. They added XRP futures, which are going gangbusters, and I'll tell you why. But I'm really, they're not proving new stuff, but they're unwinding everything. And I had it in here and accidentally deleted it, that they're even going to let the Haktua girl off the hook. They're not going to prosecute her, despite, she couldn't have not known that was a money grab. Now, here we go. Everybody's all wound up. Everyone's ready to go. Bitcoin futures, open interest, right? That means open, most likely long positions, Zoom, right? Just, this is going for good, because there's good reasons like the stablecoin bill and bad reasons like a debt problem and cuts in interest rates. There was every reason to go up, and there still is. But I'm just trying to give you the flavor of why it stopped overnight. Hong Kong has a stablecoin bill. They want the digital, you name it, the digital fill-in-the-blank currency to do well. Everybody's going to have a stablecoin bill because, as I've said, this is an underreported story, in my opinion, that there is massive demand for crypto waiting in Asia. Massive. Now, here we go. CME, which, I used to work there briefly, right? This is the main futures exchange for finance, right? They had S&P futures and they had short-term interest rate futures. XRP is total gangbusters. Now, if you're looking for some good news, here's some good news. This stablecoin thing is so big that it has probably massively increased the value of Ripple. XRP, the knock on XRP is that, it's centralized, that there's a company behind it. But now that could be working in Ripple's favor. Because if you buy Ripple, what do you get? Well, they have a stablecoin business, which he's been promoting for like 2 years. They have a massive retail fan base for XRP. They have XRP on the list of something called ISO 2022, if I have that correct, okay, which is something where banks are going to be required to use these crypto-based payment mechanisms starting in November. So here we are. Everyone's got to use XRP. It's fast money. We have stable coins, etc. And all of a sudden, at the moment where everybody is rushing in to do stable coins, there's this whole idea that someone's going to take over Ripple. Someone's going to buy Ripple. That the company is worth a massive amount of money now. And by the way, they also have a layer one, the XRP ledger. They have all of this. It's like, oh, you want in? Just buy us and you're in. Like here it is. Eagle King's pulling it up right here. Top ISO compliant cryptocurrencies. Financial institutions worldwide are trying to constantly improve, and the solution was this standard. And this standard goes into effect in November, right? And, the list of entities that are approved, XRP is at the top. So what happens if someone buys Ripple for use as a payment system for both stablecoins and XRP? XRP goes up massively. Can you imagine if Ripple was like, I don't know, Web2 or it was Google Coin or, something like that? YouTube Coin. Forget about it. It's massively higher, which is why XRP futures are moving. You could have, in theory, if there's no stupid event, you could have Bitcoin and XRP going at the same time. And you've heard my argument that Solana and ETH are both massively undervalued. So the bullish case for crypto is even more bullish than you would have thought, right? So new standard for evaluating Bitcoin equities. Wow, Bitcoin equities. You mean there's people interested in crypto stocks? They must watch the show. They must watch the show. A data-driven metric reveals which companies are truly stacking sats, because there's a whole new group of crypto equities, right? They're called Bitcoin treasury companies, meaning they're starting to look at all the companies that own massive amounts of Bitcoin. Here's the most dramatic example of Metaplanet, the Japanese MicroStrategy, just exploding in value because they own a truckload of Bitcoin. And just as a point of information, even though Bitcoin is at resistance, MicroStrategy is not. MicroStrategy is 30% away from its premium zone. That is a lot in a stock. And everybody is short this thing. Can you imagine if the Bitcoin trade was to moon Bitcoin treasury and Bitcoin mining stocks? Because I think that could easily happen, assuming you don't have a stock market disturbance. Like this could be like one of the trades of the year, especially if you look at what Metaplanet just did. Now, I love this because Ethereum is trying to do the same thing, okay? Solana could soon witness its largest consensus change as developer proposes Alpenglow. This could be a turning point for Solana, all right? The upgrade can enhance the developer experience and increase demand for the Solana tokens by enabling. So Solana hasn't moved in a year. And if they do get Solana going, even if it's just a narrative change, like, Vitalik pivoted the Ethereum narrative and Ethereum went from dead to up 80%. This could move Solana. This could move Solana into an ETF. Right? So think about it. Let's go through the stuff. 6 macro reasons to buy Bitcoin. One of them is the prosperity trade. Reason to buy XRP. Now a reason to buy Solana. Then you need something. If something happens with the banks because of gold, you have a case for tokenized assets. And as I've said, no one has traded AI inside of crypto. No one. Like no one's trading AI, period. At all. That seems crazy to me, right? Okay. Now let's go to TA. So in Solana, you have a 13 top from DeMark, and that's created sideways price action. And you know what? Let's all hope it stays that way. Let's all hope that they don't start shooting in the Middle East as the ECB is promoting a problem that would be very bad. Let's just hope it's just a pause day. right? Now, in Bitcoin, and I've noted this, not only is Bitcoin at its premium zone, but there's also a DeMark 13 top. So the 13 top is not working. And I'm like, yes. Okay. And hopefully it keeps not working, because I thought it was going to like the blow off top level of 110 and could possibly even go through that. And I was happy about that right up until Cointelegraph wrote about it. But it could still happen. You still have 5 more up days in Bitcoin, or potentially 5 more sideways days, as we just sit around and wait for these guys to just not be stupid, right? If you look at the bond market, right? Because again, this whole tax cut thing, normally in times of stress, bonds are a safe haven. Okay, well, they're not today. They're not today. This is the long bond that determines the 30-year mortgage rate. So it's kind of the thing that determines mortgage rates, and interest rates are actually going up. And you do not want to see a breakout up here. Now, the good news is it's at its premium zone. And here's my hope. Here's how you get 120K Bitcoin. If somehow there's a reason why this rate tops and it does something like that. But Luxalgo is putting support underneath this market as it rallies. And in the 10-year note yield, okay, they still got a lot of room to go higher. And you know what? Ray Dalio knows it. Now, again, at the end of the day, this has to be bullish Bitcoin. But if you hit the market with this, as we're in this euphoric, oh my God, phase, and then all this bad news hits at once. That's why the market stopped. Now, again, we have this show 2 or 3 days from now. We may look back and say, remember all that bad news? It wasn't bad. I do that all the time. I do it all the time. And hopefully that's still the case. But like the European Central Bank pulling that kind of stunt, it was like, hey, wow. Hey, let's blow up the banks. Let's not. So if Bitcoin survives this, like I said, it could go up massively, right? Like ETH has 50%. Oh, Jesus. Has 50% to go until it gets to its premium zone. And we've talked about this, right? So what I'm trying to do on today's stream is make you aware of why the market stopped. That's all. Like the market stopped because everything got weird in about 5 hours. Like the gold thing was out before Bitcoin was going to blow through 108. Then this geopolitical thing happened. Okay, so what should you do? If you wait a couple of days and there's no geopolitical event, or they come out and deny there's going to be one, that will be insanely bullish crypto, because Congress is printing money and the consumer is rolling over. Meaning, Congress has to print and the Fed has to print. Everybody has to print. And that, friends, is, as you know, massively bullish crypto. Massively. Right? 5 trillion, going from 37, 42 trillion. Like that. So the bullish setup here is epic. However, like I said, you have to be mindful of this crazy stuff. If they stand down in the Middle East, it's going to 120. It is, because the printing press is rolling. All right. So I want to give you that so you can go about your day and say, if there's no crisis, Solana and XRP, because the bullish case for crypto that is being suppressed, if the negative things that Ray Dalio are talking about doesn't materialize, crypto explodes higher. All right, folks. I know that's a mixed message, but I want to give you everything you need. That's the market update for today. We will see you tomorrow.